I am Stephanie Crawford, 34, a software engineer who gave my heart and soul to Horizon Technologies for 3 years. Despite exceptional performance reviews and driving our flagship product to success, I watched male colleagues with half my qualifications climb the ladder while I remained stuck. My boss, Michael Reynolds, made sure of that. When our startup announced its IPO, tensions rose, and the discrimination intensified. Little did he know his own stock options would finance my justice. If you are watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you are from, and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of workplace justice. I still remember the day I accepted the job offer at Horizon Technologies. The excitement of joining a promising startup with groundbreaking ideas in cloud security made me feel like I was finally where I belonged. With my master's degree in computer science and 5 years of experience at established tech firms, I was ready to make an impact at a company where innovation was valued. The office was exactly what you would expect from a Silicon Valley startup: open floor plan ping pong tables, free snacks, and that unmistakable energy of people building something revolutionary. Michael Reynolds, the director of engineering, personally recruited me after we met at a tech conference where I presented my research on encryption protocols. "Your technical skills are exactly what we need to take our security framework to the next level," Michael told me during my interview. "I see real leadership potential in you, Stephanie." Those words would later haunt me, but in the beginning everything seemed perfect. I was assigned to the core development team for Secure Cloud, the company's flagship product. Within months I had implemented several key features that significantly improved our encryption speed while maintaining top-level security standards. Thomas Wright, a senior developer who became my closest ally at Horizon, often commented on my contributions. "The optimization work you did on the authentication module cut our processing time in half," he told me during a code review. "That kind of improvement is going to be huge for the client launch." My first annual review was glowing. Michael noted my exceptional technical expertise, collaborative approach, and innovative problem-solving. I received the maximum possible merit increase to my salary. The future looked bright. I quickly befriended Natalie Adams, another female engineer who had joined around the same time. We often discussed our projects over lunch, supporting each other through technical challenges. "The culture here seems so much better than my last company," Natalie shared one day. "I feel like my ideas are actually heard." I agreed wholeheartedly. In those early days, I had no reason to believe otherwise. Emily Wilson, my mentor from my previous job, checked in with me regularly. "How is the new role treating you?" she asked during one of our monthly catch-up calls. "It is everything I hoped for," I replied enthusiastically. "I am working on cutting-edge technology. My ideas are valued, and there seems to be real potential for growth." The first year flew by in a whirlwind of challenging projects, late nights, successful product launches, and team celebrations. I had fully integrated into the company culture and felt invested in Horizon's success. My code was at the heart of features that customers loved, and I had started mentoring junior developers who joined the team. When the announcement came about the first promotion cycle, I was optimistic. Michael had hinted that I was on track for a senior engineer role, and my contributions to the company were well documented. I prepared a comprehensive self-assessment, highlighting my technical achievements, mentorship activities, and cross-functional collaborations. The day the promotions were announced, I refreshed my email constantly. Finally, the company-wide announcement arrived, listing the names of promoted employees. I scrolled through it once, twice, 3 times, certain I must have missed my name, but it wasn't there. Later that afternoon, Michael stopped by my desk. "You did great work this year, Stephanie," he said casually. "Keep it up and your time will come in the next cycle." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. "Is there anything specific I should focus on improving?" I asked, determined to address any gaps in my performance. "Just keep doing what you are doing," he replied vaguely. "Sometimes it takes a bit longer to prove yourself." Though disappointed, I accepted his feedback. I told myself that startups are chaotic, promotion decisions are complex, and maybe I needed to be more patient. I redoubled my efforts, taking on additional responsibilities and making sure my contributions were visible. Jessica Parker from HR conducted skip-level meetings with team members, supposedly to gather feedback about management. When I met with her, I briefly mentioned my disappointment about the promotion, but framed it as a desire to understand the criteria better. "Promotion cycles can be competitive," Jessica explained with a practiced smile. "Michael has the final say on his team's advancement. I suggest working closely with him to align on expectations. I took her advice to heart, scheduling regular one-on-ones with Michael to ensure we were aligned on priorities and expectations. He seemed receptive, praising my work and repeating that I was on the right track. The company continued to grow rapidly, securing another round of funding that doubled our valuation. Rumors of an eventual IPO began circulating, creating an atmosphere of anticipation and heightened pressure. New performance metrics were introduced, focusing heavily on features that would attract investors. Through it all, I maintained my dedication and optimism. I believed that merit would ultimately be recognized, that my contributions spoke for themselves, and that my professional growth was just a matter of time. How wrong I was. As the second year at Horizon Technologies unfolded, I approached my work with renewed determination. The previous promotion cycle had been disappointing, but I used it as motivation to become undeniable. I led the implementation of our most complex security feature, a zero-knowledge authentication system that became a major selling point for enterprise clients. My technical accomplishments were clear. The authentication system I designed increased our enterprise client acquisition by 30%. I spoke at 3 industry conferences representing Horizon, bringing positive attention and recruitment opportunities. I mentored 4 junior developers, all of whom became productive team members in record time. I documented everything meticulously, creating a promotion packet that left no doubt about my qualifications. Several senior engineers and even a VP from another department wrote recommendations supporting my advancement. By any objective measure, I had not just met but exceeded the requirements for promotion to senior engineer. 2 weeks before the official announcement, I scheduled a meeting with Michael to discuss my promotion prospects. His office had a spectacular view of the city, a recent upgrade that came with his own promotion to Senior Director of Engineering. I wanted to touch base about the upcoming promotion cycle. I began opening my laptop to share the documentation I had prepared. Michael leaned back in his chair, barely glancing at my screen. "Stephanie, I think you might want to temper your expectations." "What do you mean?" I asked, caught off guard by his dismissive tone. "Your technical skills are solid, but leadership requires more than coding ability. I am not seeing the executive presence needed at the senior level." "Executive presence," I repeated, struggling to understand what he meant by such a vague term. "I have led multiple projects, successfully mentored junior developers, and represented the company at industry events. What specific areas do I need to improve?" Michael's expression hardened. "That promotion was never going to happen," he scoffed. "Not this cycle anyway. Maybe focus on your current responsibilities rather than pushing for advancement so aggressively." I left his office feeling blindsided and humiliated. The dismissive way he had spoken to me contrasted sharply with how he interacted with male engineers. Just last week, he had publicly praised Daniel Sullivan, a developer who had joined the company only 10 months ago, with 2 years of prior experience, for showing leadership potential. The promotion announcements came the following week. Daniel Sullivan was promoted to senior engineer, along with 2 other male engineers who had joined after me. Once again, my name was absent from the list. That afternoon, I ran into Thomas in the break room. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me. "I cannot believe Daniel got promoted," I said, quietly pouring myself a cup of coffee with slightly shaking hands. "He has been here less than a year." Thomas glanced around to make sure we were alone. I was surprised too. Between us, his authentication module had security flaws that you ended up fixing. "The whole team knows you are more qualified." Then why I asked, though, I was beginning to suspect the answer. Thomas hesitated. "Have you noticed that none of the women in engineering have been promoted since you joined?" I had noticed, but hearing it confirmed by someone else made it impossible to ignore. I began paying closer attention to the patterns around me. Natalie Adams, despite leading a successful project to overhaul our database architecture, had also been passed over twice. Meanwhile, Kyle Johnson, who had joined the same week as Natalie, had already advanced 2 levels. During a company happy hour after most people had left, Natalie confided in me. I asked Michael directly what I needed to do to get promoted. He told me that I should focus on being a team player instead of seeking recognition. Her eyes reflected my own frustration. When Trevor suggested the exact same database solution I had proposed a month earlier, Michael called it brilliant. More conversations with female colleagues revealed similar experiences. Laura Foster from the QA team had been told she was too aggressive when she pointed out critical bugs before a release. Jennifer Patel from product management had her roadmap suggestions repeatedly ignored until a male colleague presented the same ideas. The pattern was undeniable, but doubt still crept in. Was I reading too much into the situation? Was there something genuinely lacking in my performance? My confidence began to erode. I second-guessed my technical decisions, spent extra hours triple-checking my work, and grew anxious about speaking up in meetings. The stress manifested physically. I developed insomnia, waking up at 3 a.m. with my mind racing through all the ways I might be falling short. The final confirmation came when I was accidentally copied on an email thread discussing upcoming leadership training opportunities. Michael had written, "Let us prioritize David and Jason for the executive coaching program. They have the most potential to move into architecture roles after the IPO." I had expressed interest in moving toward architecture numerous times in my development plans. My background made me at least as qualified as David or Jason, yet I had never been considered. That night I called Emily, my former mentor. "I think something discriminatory is happening, but I cannot tell if I am just being paranoid." I explained, describing the patterns I had observed. "Trust your instincts," Emily advised. "What you are describing sounds like textbook gender bias." "Have you documented these incidents?" I hadn't been, not systematically. But Emily's question was the wake-up call I needed. I began keeping a detailed journal of every interaction, every decision, every comment that seemed to reflect differential treatment. Little did I know how valuable this documentation would become. The third year at Horizon Technologies brought escalating hostility from Michael. What began as subtle dismissal of my ideas evolved into overt exclusion and undermining of my work. It started with the meeting invitations that mysteriously stopped coming. The architecture planning sessions for our next major release were happening without me, despite my crucial role in designing the security infrastructure. When I asked Michael about it, his response was curt. "Those meetings are for team leads and architects only," he said. Though I knew for a fact that Daniel Sullivan and other male senior engineers were attending. "But I designed the authentication system they are discussing," I pointed out. "Should not I be part of the conversation about how it integrates with the new features?" "We will loop you in if we need specific input," Michael replied dismissively. "For now, focus on fixing the bugs in the current release." The bugs he referred to were minor issues that had been in the backlog for months and were suddenly deemed urgent when assigned to me. Meanwhile, I was pulled from the innovative projects I had been leading and assigned maintenance work that was typically given to junior developers. In team meetings, Michael began publicly questioning my technical decisions in ways he never did with male colleagues. "Are you sure that encryption method is the best approach?" he asked during my presentation on security enhancements, interrupting me mid-sentence. "It seems unnecessarily complex." "The complexity is necessary for the level of security our enterprise clients require," I explained, maintaining my composure. "I have benchmarked it against 3 alternatives, and this approach offers the best balance of security and performance." "Let us have Daniel review it before we commit," Michael concluded, effectively undermining my expertise in front of the entire team. These public challenges became a regular occurrence. Each time I came prepared with data and rationale for my decisions, and each time Michael found a way to question my judgment or defer to a male colleague for validation. The emotional toll was immense. I began dreading team meetings, experiencing anxiety symptoms before presentations, and second-guessing even my most sound technical judgments. My sleep suffered further, and I developed stress-induced migraines that sometimes left me unable to work effectively. The situation escalated when I overheard a conversation between Michael and another director in the break room. They did not notice me entering. "The problem with female engineers is they get too emotional about their code," Michael was saying. "They take feedback personally, instead of seeing the technical necessity. Plus, they always want flexible schedules once they have kids," the other director added. "We need people who can commit 100%, especially going into the IPO." I froze, coffee mug in hand, as they continued discussing how risky it was to put women in critical roles. When they finally noticed me, they abruptly changed the subject, but the damage was done. Their casual discrimination was now out in the open. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Thomas forwarded me a chat log from a private channel that Michael had accidentally invited him to. The conversation between Michael and several other male leaders discussed upcoming promotions. "Michael HR is pushing for more gender diversity in senior roles before the IPO. Engineering VP. Who do we have in the pipeline? Michael, Stephanie, and Natalie technically meet the criteria, but I am holding off. Leadership is about more than checking boxes. Product director. Good call. The IPO is too critical to make diversity hires. Stick with proven leaders. Michael. Exactly. We can revisit after we go public. For now, I am fast-tracking Daniel and Jason. Reading those messages, something broke inside me. All my doubts about whether I was imagining the discrimination vanished. This was real, deliberate, and documented. Through a discreet conversation with a finance team member, I learned that the salary disparities were just as stark as the promotion inequities. Male engineers at my level were making 15 to 20% more on average with larger stock option grants. I decided to formally raise my concerns through proper channels. I scheduled a meeting with Jessica from HR, bringing documentation of the patterns I had observed. These are serious allegations, Jessica said after reviewing my notes. But without direct evidence of intent to discriminate, it is difficult to establish a clear policy violation. What about the chat logs Thomas shared with me? I asked. Those were obtained from a private channel you were not invited to, she pointed out. There are confidentiality concerns. Besides, the comments are unfortunately subjective and could be interpreted multiple ways. It was clear that going through internal channels would lead nowhere. The company was racing toward an IPO, and anything that might disrupt that process or create negative publicity was being systematically buried. My personal life began to suffer significantly. Friends commented that I seemed withdrawn and constantly preoccupied. Dating became impossible as I spent evenings obsessively documenting incidents and researching my options. My parents noticed my deteriorating mental health during our weekly calls, but I downplayed my struggles, not wanting them to worry. Emily suggested I consider leaving the company. Your talent would be valued elsewhere, she said during one of our calls. This environment is toxic. I considered it seriously. I updated my resume and took a few calls with recruiters. The opportunities were promising, my technical skills were in high demand, but something held me back. Why should I be the one to leave? I asked Emily. I did nothing wrong. They are the ones violating employment law. If I go, nothing changes, and they continue discriminating against other women. Emily sighed. You are right, but at what personal cost? I am worried about you. I was worried too, but increasingly my worry was transforming into determination. I began methodically gathering evidence, screenshots of chat logs, copies of emails, documentation of assignment patterns, promotion records, showing gender disparities, and detailed notes from conversations. What I did not know yet was that this evidence would become the foundation for a case that would not just change my career trajectory, but potentially transform the company itself. The announcement of the third annual promotion cycle coincided with growing excitement about Horizon's IPO plans. The company had hired a prestigious investment bank to underwrite the offering, and rumors placed the valuation at well over $1 billion. Stock options were the main topic of conversation in break rooms and Slack channels. For senior leaders like Michael, the IPO meant potential windfalls worth millions of dollars. The stock option packages granted to early directors would be life-changing once the 6-month lockup period after the IPO expired. Against this backdrop of anticipation and potential wealth, I approached Michael about the upcoming promotion cycle. Despite everything, I still felt obligated to follow the proper procedures. I would like to submit my promotion packet for this cycle, I said during our weekly one-on-one meeting. Michael did not even try to hide his irritation. Stephanie, do not waste your time. The leadership team has already identified the promotion candidates for this cycle, and your name is not on the list. May I ask why? My technical performance exceeds all the stated requirements. I have led multiple successful projects this year alone. This is not just about technical skills, he replied with thinly veiled condescension. It is about leadership presence and cultural fit with the executive team. Some people just are not cut out for senior leadership, and that is okay. His dismissive tone made it clear that further discussion was pointless. I left his office with my hands shaking from suppressed anger. The following week, I completed a major overhaul of the security infrastructure that protected our clients' most sensitive data. The project had been challenging, requiring me to work late nights and weekends to meet the aggressive timeline driven by the upcoming IPO. When I presented the results to the executive team, including the CEO, the response was overwhelmingly positive. This is exactly the kind of innovation that will differentiate us in the market, the CEO commented. Great work by the team. After the meeting, I overheard the CEO asking Michael, who led that security redesign. It is impressive work. Daniel Sullivan spearheaded it. Michael responded without hesitation. He has really stepped up as a technical leader. I stood frozen in the hallway, unable to believe what I had just heard. Daniel had contributed to the project, but in a supporting role implementing one module based on my architecture. The overall design coordination and most of the critical components had been my work. That evening, Thomas messaged me. We need to talk, not on company channels. We met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. Thomas looked troubled as he sat down across from me. I cannot stay silent anymore, he began. Michael has been actively undermining you for years. It is not just passive bias. He is deliberately blocking your advancement. What do you mean, I asked, though part of me already knew. In leadership meetings, whenever your name comes up for high-visibility projects or promotion, he shoots it down. He has told other directors that you are difficult to work with and not ready for leadership. None of it is true, but it is affecting how others perceive you. Thomas hesitated before continuing. There is more. He has a private email group with some of the other male directors where they discuss keeping the leadership culture intact through the IPO. It is pretty explicit about maintaining what they call the brotherhood at the top. He showed me screenshots he had taken of some of these emails. One from Michael stood out. We need to be strategic about who gets promoted before the IPO. The last thing we need is to dilute the leadership culture with diversity hires who have not proven themselves. Stephanie has technical skills, but she lacks the executive mindset we need. Let us hold off on any female promotions until after we go public. Reading those words, seeing such explicit discrimination in black and white, something broke inside me. Years of gaslighting, of being told I was imagining things, or that I simply was not good enough, came crashing down against this irrefutable evidence. The next day I experienced what I later learned was a panic attack. During a team meeting, my heart started racing. I could not catch my breath, and my vision narrowed to pinpoints. I had to excuse myself and lock myself in a bathroom stall until the symptoms subsided. When I returned to my desk, I found an email announcing that Daniel Sullivan had been promoted to lead architect, a role I had been working toward for 3 years. That afternoon, I requested a meeting with both Michael and Jessica from HR to formally discuss my concerns about gender discrimination. The meeting was set for the following day. I prepared thoroughly, bringing a folder with documentation of the pattern of discriminatory treatment, but the meeting did not go as expected. These are serious allegations, Jessica said, looking uncomfortable. They are not allegations, they are documented facts, I replied, pushing the folder toward her. Michael dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand. Stephanie is upset about not being promoted as quickly as she would like. This is a performance issue, not discrimination. My performance reviews have all been excellent, I countered. I can prove that male colleagues with less experience and fewer accomplishments have been promoted over me repeatedly. Different employees progress at different rates, Jessica offered weakly. Based on what criteria, I pressed. Because from where I sit, the only relevant difference is gender. Michael's face hardened. This is exactly the kind of attitude that confirms you are not ready for leadership. Professional disagreements should not immediately be blamed on discrimination. The meeting ended with vague promises to look into my concerns, but it was clear nothing would change. As I gathered my documents, Jessica approached me privately. For what it is worth, she whispered, yours is not the first complaint about Michael, but with the IPO coming up, leadership is focused on stability. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I contacted an employment attorney specializing in gender discrimination cases. After reviewing my documentation during a 3-hour consultation, she was unequivocal. This is one of the strongest cases of systemic gender discrimination I have seen, she told me. The email evidence alone establishes clear intent. You have grounds for an EEOC complaint and potentially a substantial lawsuit. She explained the process of filing with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the potential outcomes, and the likely response from Horizon. She did not sugarcoat the challenges. This will be difficult, she warned. They will try to discredit you professionally and personally. They may offer a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement. You need to decide what justice looks like for you. I spent the weekend considering my options. I could leave the company and find a better environment, but that would do nothing for the other women facing the same discrimination. I could continue fighting internally, but 3 years had proven that approach ineffective. Or I could take formal legal action which carried significant risks, but might actually create meaningful change. By Monday morning, my decision was made. With my attorney's help, I prepared and submitted a comprehensive EEOC filing, including years of documentation, the damning emails and chat logs, comparative promotion data, showing clear gender disparities and testimonials from SAID colleagues willing to support my claims. As I electronically signed the submission, I felt a strange mix of terror and relief. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next would either vindicate years of struggle or potentially end my career in Silicon Valley. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of power returning. I was no longer a victim. I was fighting back. The response to my EEOC filing was faster and more dramatic than I had anticipated. Just 2 days after the commission formally notified Horizon Technologies, Jessica from HR called me. "We need you in a meeting tomorrow morning," she said, her voice tight with tension. "The leadership team wants to discuss your concerns directly." "Will my attorney be permitted to attend?" I asked, following my lawyer's advice not to attend any such meetings alone. A pause. "Yes, that would be appropriate." The meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning in the executive conference room, a space I had rarely been invited to enter. My attorney, Victoria Martinez, met me in the lobby, her confident presence immediately calming my nerves. "Remember," she advised quietly as we rode the elevator, "you have done nothing wrong. They are the ones who need to explain themselves." The conference room was already occupied when we arrived. Jessica sat beside Stephanie Harper, Horizon's chief legal officer, a woman I had seen only at all-hands meetings. Michael was there, looking pale and tense, along with the CEO, Brian Thompson, and the VP of Human Resources, David Clark. "Thank you for coming, Miss Crawford," Brian began formally. "We want to address the concerns raised in your EEOC complaint directly and transparently." Victoria spoke before I could. "My client has already documented her concerns extensively in the filing. What specific aspects would you like to discuss today?" David Clark cleared his throat. "We have convened what we call a rapid alignment meeting to address serious allegations that affect company culture and compliance. We want to understand Miss Crawford's perspective directly." "My perspective is well documented," I said calmly. "For 3 years I have experienced systematic gender discrimination, particularly regarding promotions and recognition. The evidence is clear." Brian looked uncomfortable. "These are serious claims that would represent a significant departure from our company values if substantiated." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "They are already substantiated. My client has provided extensive documentation." Jessica opened a folder in front of her. "We have reviewed the initial filing. There are some communications that, taken out of context, could be misinterpreted." "What context would justify explicitly stating that female engineers should be blocked from promotion until after the IPO?" I asked directly. Michael shifted in his chair. "I never said." "Actually, you did," David interrupted, surprising everyone. The HR lead slid my EEOC filing forward, open to an exhibit. He read the chat logs, his breathing got shallow, and he whispered, "Is this the full paper trail?" The room fell silent as Michael stared at the printed screenshots of his own words. "There are numerous additional exhibits," Victoria added into the silence, "including communications specifically targeting Miss Crawford and other female engineers for differential treatment based explicitly on gender." Stephanie Harper, the CLO, spoke for the first time. "I would like to request a brief recess to confer with my colleagues." Victoria nodded. "Of course. We will wait outside." In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, legs suddenly weak. "Did you see Michael's face when David showed him the chat logs?" "He was not expecting them to have reviewed the evidence so thoroughly before this meeting," Victoria observed. "That is a good sign. They are taking this seriously." 20 minutes later, we were called back in. The atmosphere had shifted noticeably. "Miss Crawford," Brian began, his tone markedly more subdued. "First, I want to personally apologize for what you have experienced. The communications included in your filing are completely unacceptable and violate everything Horizon claims to stand for as a company." I nodded, but remained silent, following Victoria's guidance to let them make the first substantive offer. "We would like to resolve this situation promptly and fairly," Stephanie Harper continued. "We are prepared to discuss appropriate remedies, including compensation, promotion, and structural changes to prevent similar situations in the future." "What about Michael?" I asked directly. Brian glanced at Michael, who was staring fixedly at the table. "We are initiating an internal investigation into all aspects of this situation, including Mr. Reynolds' management practices and decisions. During that process, he will be placed on administrative leave." Michael's head snapped up. "You cannot be serious. The IPO is 8 weeks away. My team is perfectly capable of functioning under interim leadership." Brian cut him off firmly. "This issue goes beyond individual teams. It represents a potential existential threat to our company's valuation and public offering if not addressed properly." The financial reality had apparently overridden any personal loyalties. With hundreds of millions of dollars at stake in the upcoming IPO, Horizon could not afford an active EEOC investigation or discrimination lawsuit. Victoria steered the conversation toward specifics. "My client has experienced significant career and financial damage over 3 years. Any resolution would need to address back compensation, appropriate promotion, reporting structure changes, and guarantees against retaliation." "Of course," Stephanie agreed quickly. "We would like to schedule a formal settlement discussion with your team as soon as possible." As we left the meeting, Jessica approached me privately. "For what it is worth, you have opened the floodgates. After your filing, 3 other women have come forward with similar experiences. The company can no longer pretend this is an isolated incident." That evening, I received an email from Katherine Johnson, a senior woman from the finance department whom I had never directly worked with. "I heard about your EEOC filing," she wrote. "Thank you for your courage. Many of us have experienced similar treatment but feared the consequences of speaking up. Your stand has already created ripples throughout the company. Whatever happens next, know that you have supporters throughout Horizon, even if we have been silent until now." Over the next 2 weeks, my attorney engaged in intensive negotiation with Horizon's legal team. The company was clearly motivated to resolve the situation before it could affect the IPO process. Their initial settlement offer was substantial, but came with extensive non-disclosure requirements that would prevent any meaningful change in company culture. Victoria pushed back hard. "My client is not interested in being silenced with money. The goal here is not just personal compensation but systemic change." The turning point came when another female engineer filed her own EEOC complaint, citing many of the same discriminatory patterns. Horizon's leadership realized they were facing not an isolated grievance, but potentially a class action that could derail their public offering entirely. The revised settlement offer addressed both my individual situation and the broader cultural issues. Immediate promotion to principal architect with 3 years of back pay differential, a substantial stock option grant equivalent to what I would have received had I been promoted appropriately from the beginning, removal from Michael's management chain permanently, creation of a diversity and inclusion committee with actual authority and budget, on which I would serve, mandatory review of all promotion and compensation decisions for gender disparities, implementation of anonymous reporting systems for discrimination concerns. The financial component was structured to include a percentage of stock options that would vest immediately upon the IPO, effectively tying my compensation directly to the company event that Michael and others had used as an excuse to block women's advancement. As the settlement was being finalized, I learned through company channels that the internal investigation into Michael had uncovered discriminatory patterns affecting at least 12 female employees across multiple teams. His administrative leave had been extended indefinitely. The power dynamic had completely reversed. The man who had blocked my career advancement for years was now sidelined while I was being elevated to a leadership position with the full backing of the executive team, the same executives who had previously accepted Michael's assessment of my capabilities without question. The day I signed the settlement agreement, Thomas sent me a message. "Justice may be slow, but sometimes it arrives in spectacular fashion. The entire engineering department is talking about the changes coming. You have transformed this company." The weeks following the settlement agreement brought dramatic changes to Horizon Technologies. With Michael on extended administrative leave, the engineering department operated under interim leadership from Sarah Bennett, a well-respected director from another division. The difference in management style was immediately apparent. "I would like you to lead the security architecture review ahead of the IPO," Sarah told me during our first meeting after my promotion to principal architect became official. "Your technical expertise is exactly what we need for this critical phase." The recognition of my abilities so long denied felt surreal. My new role came with expanded responsibilities, a team of engineers reporting to me, and a seat at the architectural planning meetings that I had previously been excluded from. Some colleagues who had distanced themselves during my conflict with Michael now approached me with newfound respect, though I noted the opportunism in some of these reconnections. Others, like Thomas and Natalie, who had supported me through the darkest periods, remained my most trusted allies. The settlement negotiations had been completed just 6 weeks before the scheduled IPO. As part of the agreement, I received a substantial grant of stock options, including some that would vest immediately upon the public offering, rather than following the usual 4-year vesting schedule. The company also provided back pay for the salary differential I should have received had I been promoted appropriately over the previous 3 years. My attorney had negotiated brilliantly on the stock option component. They think they are giving you paper that might be valuable someday, Victoria explained. But based on the projected IPO price, they are actually handing you a 7-figure settlement that will cost them far more than they realize once the company goes public. She was right. When Horizon Technologies finally had its IPO, the opening price exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The stock jumped 60% on the first day of trading, making the options included in my settlement worth over $2 million once they vested. There was a particular satisfaction in knowing that the very event Michael had used as an excuse to block women's advancement, the IPO he had been so focused on, had become the mechanism for my financial compensation. The stock options that would have gone to him during his administrative leave had essentially been redistributed, some of them ultimately funding my settlement. Michael never returned to Horizon Technologies. 3 weeks after the IPO, a terse company-wide email announced his departure to pursue other opportunities. No further explanation was provided, but the timing just after the lockup period for his pre-IPO shares began suggested a negotiated exit that allowed him to retain at least some of his equity. I found I had little interest in his fate. My focus had shifted to the structural changes I could help implement to prevent others from experiencing what I had endured. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee established as part of my settlement became a powerful force for change within the company. With direct reporting lines to the board of directors and a substantial budget, we implemented comprehensive reviews of promotion patterns, compensation, equity, and management practices. The data speaks for itself. I presented during an executive meeting 3 months after the IPO. When we standardize for experience and performance metrics, we see a 22% promotion rate for men versus an 8% rate for women in technical roles. That gap cannot be explained by anything other than systemic bias. The CEO, who had been shaken by the evidence in my EEOC filing and the subsequent internal investigation, became an unexpected ally in pushing for change. "This stops now," he declared after my presentation. "I want monthly reports on our progress toward closing these gaps, and I want accountability built into every manager's performance metrics." Jessica from HR, who had initially been constrained by company politics from addressing discrimination concerns, found her role expanded and empowered. "We are implementing blind review processes for promotion packets," she informed me. "No names, pronouns, or identifying information, just qualifications and achievements." Some of the most rewarding moments came from mentoring other women in the engineering department. Natalie, who had also been consistently overlooked, received her long overdue promotion during the next cycle. "Your fight made this possible," she told me over celebration drinks. "You kicked the door open for all of us." I reconnected with Emily, my mentor, who had encouraged me to document everything from the beginning. "I never doubted you would prevail," she said during our dinner. "But I never imagined you would transform an entire company in the process." The financial settlement provided a freedom I had never experienced before. I paid off my student loans, purchased a condominium in the city, and established a foundation to provide legal support to women facing workplace discrimination who could not afford representation. 6 months after the settlement, I received an email from Sarah Bennett, who had been permanently appointed as the new engineering director. "I wanted you to know that the security architecture you designed has become a central selling point for our enterprise clients," she wrote. "The board specifically mentioned your contributions during the quarterly review. Your technical leadership has been instrumental in our post-IPO success." Recognition that had been deliberately withheld for years was finally coming freely. The validation was satisfying, but what meant more was knowing that the path would be clearer for the women who came after me. I chose to stay at Horizon rather than leave, despite receiving numerous recruitment offers from other companies who had heard about my technical expertise through industry channels. My decision surprised some who assumed I would want a fresh start elsewhere. "Why stay after everything you went through?" Thomas asked me one day. "Because leaving would be easier for them," I explained. "I want them to do the hard work of changing the culture with me watching. And I want every woman in this company to see that you can fight discrimination and not only survive but thrive in the aftermath." The systems I helped put in place began showing results. Within a year, the promotion rates for qualified women had nearly equalized with those of their male counterparts. The compensation review revealed and corrected significant gender-based pay disparities across the company. Most importantly, the culture began to shift. Women spoke more freely in meetings, knowing their ideas would be heard. Managers became more conscious of their biases in evaluating performance. The executive team, once almost exclusively male, welcomed 3 new female members. The victory was not just about my personal justice, but about creating lasting change that would benefit countless others. The settlement money provided financial security, but the real value was in the transformation I had helped catalyze. The journey toward healing began slowly. Even with the professional vindication and financial settlement, the emotional scars from years of discrimination and gaslighting did not disappear overnight. For months after the resolution, I still experienced anxiety before important meetings, still found myself over-documenting every decision and interaction out of ingrained habit. My first step toward recovery was acknowledging the trauma. With the encouragement of friends and family, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in workplace trauma and rebuilding professional confidence. "What you experienced was a form of psychological abuse," Dr. Karen Martinez explained during one of our sessions. "Your brain developed protective mechanisms to survive a hostile environment. It will take time to rewire those responses." She was right. The hypervigilance, the tendency to assume negative intentions, the reflexive defensiveness when receiving feedback, these were all adaptive behaviors in a discriminatory environment that had become maladaptive in my new reality. Reclaiming my professional identity meant remembering who I was before the years of discrimination had distorted my self-perception. I rediscovered my passion for solving complex technical problems without the cloud of constantly having to prove my worth hanging over me. I had forgotten what it feels like to just be an engineer. I confided to Natalie during a late-night coding session for a challenging project, to focus on the problem rather than on how my solution will be perceived. "That is what they stole from us," she replied thoughtfully. "Not just opportunities, but the pure joy of the work." We were gradually reclaiming that joy, one project at a time. An unexpected part of my healing journey was becoming a mentor and advocate for other women in technology. Within Horizon, I established a mentorship program specifically designed to support women in technical roles. The program paired junior women with senior leaders and included structured career development guidance. "Your experience has created a roadmap for others," Jessica told me, as we worked on implementing the program. "You are showing them not just how to recognize discrimination, but how to document it, address it, and overcome it." Beyond Horizon, I began speaking at industry conferences about my experience not as a victim, but as someone who had successfully challenged systemic discrimination. My story resonated particularly with young women entering the field who feared the obstacles they might face. After one such talk, a computer science student approached me. I was considering switching majors because of stories I had heard about tech culture, she admitted. "But hearing how you fought back gives me hope that I can succeed without compromising my dignity." These moments of connection and impact became powerful medicine for my own healing. The support networks I developed during this period proved invaluable. A group of female tech leaders from various companies began meeting monthly to share experiences and strategies. What started as informal dinners evolved into a structured professional network with mentorship programs, job referrals, and resources for women facing discrimination. Within Horizon, the Diversity and Inclusion Committee's work expanded beyond gender issues to address other forms of discrimination. We implemented comprehensive training programs, revised hiring practices, and established accountability metrics for management at all levels. "The changes you initiated have altered the company's DNA," the CEO commented during a review meeting. "Our internal surveys show a 35% increase in employees feeling valued and included over the past year." But perhaps the most profound healing came from witnessing the ripple effects of my stand against discrimination. 2 other tech companies in our region faced similar EEOC complaints, and their leadership teams reached out to Horizon to learn from our experience in implementing meaningful change. Your case has become something of a case study in what not to do and how to correct course. Catherine from finance informed me. Companies are realizing that addressing discrimination proactively is both ethically right and financially prudent. Through it all, I gained wisdom that extended far beyond professional spheres. I learned that systems do not change unless they are challenged, that documentation is power, and that speaking truth eventually overcomes even the most entrenched injustice. The mistake they made, I reflected to Victoria during a check-in meeting a year after the settlement, was assuming my silence was the same as acceptance. That is the mistake they always make, she replied with a knowing smile. They confuse accommodation with agreement until someone like you decides the cost of silence is too high. The personal cost had indeed been high: years of stress, damaged relationships, self-doubt, and health impacts that I was still addressing. But the alternative, accepting injustice and allowing it to continue unchallenged, would have carried an even greater cost to my integrity and to all the women who would have faced the same discrimination after me. As I approach the 2-year anniversary of the settlement, I can finally say I have found a measure of peace. My work is once again a source of pride and joy, rather than stress and validation seeking. My relationships have deepened with those who stood by me, and expanded to include new connections forged through shared commitment to equity. The financial security from the settlement has allowed me to volunteer with organizations that help underrepresented groups enter technology fields. I fund scholarships for women pursuing computer science degrees and sponsor coding camps in underserved communities. The lesson I carry forward and share whenever I can is simple but powerful: documentation is the antidote to gaslighting, community is the answer to isolation, and persistence is how systems ultimately change. For anyone facing discrimination, remember that your experience is valid, your worth is not determined by those who fail to recognize it, and your voice matters more than you know. The path to justice may be long and difficult, but creating change that benefits others brings a healing that no personal success alone could match. Have you ever had to stand up against unfair treatment at work? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the courage they need. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more stories that shine light on workplace justice. Remember, documentation is power, and sometimes the systems that seem most intimidating are the ones most vulnerable to the simple truth.